Hello, I'm Jeremy, and we'll be talking about taxes in New York City today, or in New York State. Milton, Freidman, and John Stossel with ReasonTv. So this all started because I saw a video with Tim Pool, and he does a really good job in this video about explaining some of the things with taxes. It's not nearly everything, there's a lot more to it. And we're going to go ahead and get into some of these things. So there are links in the description below. The one from Tim Pool, it's called New York City is in Shambles, City Decaying Due to Insane Democrat Policies, and the US is Next. And then we have a video from the Freedom to Choose Network, and it's titled, Who Really Pays Business Taxes? And I have this video in here because Milton Freidman is a Nobel Prize winner economist, and this is back in like the 70s or 80s. It's old, decades old. And here he is talking about the same thing. And then finally we have ReasonTv with John Stossel, and the title of the video is Stossel, Sweden is not a socialist success. And they talk about taxes and government throughout the whole thing. It's just 5 minutes long. It's packed with information, though. I'm not going to go over every little detail of every little thing, just because it's just too much. YouTube likes 10 to 15 minute videos, or that's my understanding as of right now. So if you like what you're doing, and we also have, I have that sheet pulled up here. And so this is what I'm going to be doing. And this is called, taxes. Let me move this over a little bit. It's just taxes. You can divide it up into a billion other categories, which I'm already kind of doing. And so one of the categories, as you can see right there under facts, is Sweden, because we're going to talk about Sweden's history and kind of what happened to them. We have definitions for this stuff. I won't go over the whole thing every single time that I make a video over taxes, so you're just going to have to watch all this stuff and keep up with it. And this is going to be one of the things that I'm going to monetize later on, is that I'm going to have a ton of these things. And they're going to be all over my videos, but I'll create a website where it'll be at one place, so then you can get the highlights really well, and so then you can go and just shove it down every single person's throat who's a liar. Now, if it's not what they do, kind of be easy on them. But if it's something that's more directly related to the field of work that they're in, then yes, shove it down their throat more and more often. And if it's a politician, shove it all the way down their throat until it comes out the other end. They deserve no mercy. They should know better than anyone. And there's no excuse for it. So if you like what I'm doing, if you agree with this stuff, if you understand this, then I need a like, a thumbs up, become a member. I've got Patreon, Subscribestar. Help me out with YouTube and their algorithm, or Bitchute, or Rumble, or whatever it is that you're watching from, because that's the way that stuff works. And so we're going to start off kind of where we last left off here with this sheet. And so I'm not trying to change anyone's mind. That's not what I'm doing. This is about showing that there are lies, whether if they're intentional or not. Because the website that I'm going to build is going to address these issues. I figured it out. And it's one thing. And it's all over the place. And it's weird. It's a lot of these things that I have figured out, it's not so much that I necessarily came up with them. It's just I recognized all these things and I just connected the dots, and it was like, what a clear picture this is. So tax, it's compulsory, it's not voluntary. Contribution to state revenue levied by the government on workers' income and business profits, which it all comes down. The way all that stuff gets paid is by the products that they sell or the services that they offer. Every last one of it. Or added to the cost of some goods, services, or transactions. And it's also a big problem, too, because of the Pareto principle, which is the 80-20 rule. That's how you get the 1%, where they've got like the overwhelming majority of money, and very few people have any money. The Gini coefficient is where whenever you have really rich people next to really poor people, violence just erupts like mad, and it just kind of all goes downhill. But if you have people who are rich next to other rich people, people who are poor next to other poor people. There's no issue. It's not poverty that's an issue. It's poverty despairs. It's whenever you have disparaging levels of income, where you have the greater it is with the really rich and the really poor, the more violent it gets. And they talk about reasons for it. One of them is that it tends to be primarily in young men, and they're looking for the attention of females, and it's hard to do that whenever you're incredibly poor. And so what can you do? It's like, well, you can be physically strong and be kind of a bully. And it's like, well, yeah, I mean, because it doesn't matter how rich you are, you can still go out there and kick some butt, you know. So you don't have to be rich to be able to do that. And so Tim Pool, man, he does a pretty good job with talking about this stuff. And he's talking about New York and New York State. And so some facts that we have is that Congress is giving more than $12 billion to New York State, $6 billion to New York City, another $6 billion to the Metro and Transit Authority, and $9 billion to state schools. I've heard about all this stuff. For some reason, they have the Metro Transit Authority there, and for some reason, I don't know why, but the state runs that thing instead of just letting them run themselves and charge however they want to. And what happens is that because it's all state run, the politicians just go out there and they just make all these claims and promises, which are just, it's absolute lies. It's been going downhill. It looks like trash. It's not safe. It's dirty. It's garbage. And it's like you just keep doing the same thing over and over and over again. You're going to get the same thing. It's stupidity. It's like, hand it over to the free market, let them take care of themselves, and watch that thing skyrocket. Watch it do well. And we're going to see an example of that later in this video. $9 billion to state schools. Yes. So New York State, their total budget for 2021 is $212 billion, $18 billion higher than last year. And Florida has 2 million more people than New York State, but yet its budget is $97 billion in 2021. Make that make sense. Make that make sense. You know what? Como, he's got like a couple $1 million that he's paying with taxpayer money to give his wife like some kind of entourage and cleaning and limo services and just all this flamboyant nonsense garbage. Patience, calm. New York City is also one of the few cities that has a city income tax. And they still can't manage to do this? Are you kidding me? All of this money, and they still can't fix these problems. All billions and billions and billions and billions and billions. And we've seen this over and over and over again. We see this with China. We've seen this with Venezuela. You don't see this the opposite. Whenever a country's economy collapses, it's whenever people are out there in the streets with wheelbarrows full of cash and they're buying toilet paper and bread. It's never the other way around. You don't ever see an economy collapse whenever they have $1 and they're buying wheelbarrows full of toilet paper and bread or whatever good that they want. It's never in that direction. The more that taxes go up, it means the more everything costs. So it means the more that it costs for the farmers and then to transport their goods to some place like a mill, and then everything there from all their machines, and with the farmers with their combines and tractors, engines, oil changes, everything. And then if it's like wheat and it's to a mill and it gets milled down, then the whole factory, all the parts and labor and the building and their employees and their safety equipment and all that stuff, and then onto the bakery. And it's like this with everything. With everything that they buy, everything went up because all taxes went up. Everything. That's not what you want. It's backwards. But our school system is insane. They do all this clown world nonsense, backward teach that they put this in everybody's head, and so everybody comes out of school being stupid. Not because they are, but because they were taught wrong. And we're going to, with the Sweden part, I'm going to show you a clear-cut example with this. And Tim Pool's video, it's 21 minutes long. There's no way I'm going to go over all of it, but it's good. He talks about how he gives an example of Home Depot that they increased taxes by just a fraction, and then Home Depot shut down, went over to the neighboring county and opened up there, because whenever you're dealing with companies where they have hundreds of thousands of dollars of transactions and you raise it up a little bit, you're going to drive a little bit further to save thousands of dollars on the hundreds of thousands or millions of dollars. And that's the way these businesses are. There are definitely... I had a personal contractor who was doing some work for me, and whenever COVID came along and hit, he got wiped out because he didn't have his savings. And now he's working for a $2 million company, and their target is to reach $3 million. All of his prices went up. You know why? Because before it was just kind of him. He was kind of a ma and pa kind of operation going on, and he had a couple little crews. But he was just in my city where I was. With this $2 million corporation, they have several places all over, not just in the city, but in other cities as well. And so they're all feeding into the head CEO right there, and they've got these all, and so there's more overhead, there's more marketing, there's more everything, so their prices are up, which is why the best people, whenever you really want cheap work from electricians, carpenters, plumbers, or whatever, you want the little small mom and pa shop where mom's a secretary, pa is the guy that goes out there and work, and they've got no one else. It's just them, because then all they're doing is they're just working to have a living, to be able to pay for their life and to put money away for retirement, and they don't care about employees. They don't have any. Maybe every now and then they might have one or two or something like that, but it's like next to nothing. Maybe they have a few employees, so if he does get sick or something, then they still have income coming in, but it's really small, low-key stuff. And it's like, that's great. But they may not always have all the equipment needed. The bigger the job is, the less they're going to be able to handle it. So there's trade-offs to all that stuff. But if you know it's going to be pretty routine, start off with someone, like if you're looking in the phone book that they don't have a big ad anywhere, just look for a name, call them on up, see what their rates are. Anyways, kind of getting off on this. And he gives some really good examples of it. Another one that he talks about is that whenever you increase taxes, you decrease spending. And it's because people have less disposable income. And it's like, what you want to do is that every time somebody has a dollar and they spend that dollar, it gets taxed. And so you want that dollar to go around and around and around, and you don't want it to stop. It's just like, it's penny pinching. It's nickeling and diming something like crazy. It's like, yeah, a nickel and a dime isn't a lot, but if that dollar's being spent over and over and over and keeps getting passed around, then you get a lot out of it. It's like one of the reasons why McDonald's is a billion-dollar industry. It's not because they sell a billion-dollar burger. It's because they have the value meal and they sell burgers for $1. It's like, who has $1? It's like, everybody has $1. If you don't have $1 for some reason, then you shouldn't be out there. You need to be put away in a mental hospital of some kind, because if you can't even manage to have $1, yeah, that's a whole different situation. You're talking about people who are incapable of making decisions for themselves. So anyways, we're going to go on to the next video, to the second segment here. And so I'm going to play just a little bit at the beginning right here.
That somehow there are taxes on business and there are taxes on people. There has been a great deal of talk, and I use only the most recent proposals of President Carter for illustration, because this...
So that gives you an idea how old this is. He's talking about President Carter. So if that's Carter, then we're talking about the 80s, because I know I was alive. Reagan was in the 90s. I saw Reagan. So this is how old this is. Decades old.
The same kind of talk has emanated from every administration, Republican or Democrat.
From every administration, Republican or Democrat. Yes, absolutely. They're all liars. And I'm fed up with it.
There is talk about how we're not going to raise taxes on people, we're going to raise it on business, on corporations. The most obvious example is with Social Security tax. Supposedly, that tax is half on employee and half on employer.
And we're going to get into the Social Security tax because this last one with ReasonTv, exact same thing.
But that's a fake. It's all paid by the employee. It adds to the wage cost of hiring a person.
It's all fake. It's all on the person. It's every last bit of it. It's what I said. Whenever taxes increase, it increases everything everywhere for everyone. You want things to be cheaper? You want things to be better? You get these lying politicians out of it. The fewer politicians, the better. And so you can watch the rest of the video for yourself. It's not very long. It's just 1:42. But I have this in here to show that the information's in it. There's nothing but one side of the argument has all the information, and the other side has absolutely nothing. There is no communist country out there, no socialist country that's just this booming success. It's always starvation, military force, and death. It's insane. It's not even close. So now here we're going to move on to John Stossel with ReasonTv, and it's just so with this. Pull up all my sheets here that I have of notes. So Sweden in the 70s and 80s, they had socialism kind of creeping on in, and there were healthcare waiting lines. Their economy was crap, but now they have a free market, and it's because they didn't bring enough to pay. So I didn't word this very well. So in the 70s and 80s, they had healthcare waiting lines. It was going socialist towards their economy. And it didn't bring in enough money to pay for the economy. But now they have a free market. And so this guy, Johan Nordenberg, who's from Sweden, did a documentary called Sweden, Lessons for America. Let me show this guy here.
From Sweden. My name is Johan Norberg, and this is where I was born and raised.
Johan Norberg made this documentary because he wanted to set the record straight.
It's like, why have we not heard about this? Why is this even going on? There's plenty of information for people to take to show that this is all one-sided. And John Stossel does a really good deal here, and he shows, man, what was this guy's name? This isn't Joe Biden. Bernie Sanders. And all the lies that comes out of his hole. It's like somebody needs to sew his mouth shut. Same thing with the Young Turks guy. It's like it's just one idiot after another. And he talks about how whenever you have socialism like Venezuela or Cuba or North Korea, their economies are trash. Everything about them is trash. And so there are some things that are different. So one of the things that I did not, there's quite a bit that I didn't know because I don't know much about Sweden. I know some things, but they do not tax the rich. People making less than $37,000 a year, which is below the national average, they get taxed a lot, 60%. And I was thinking about this. I was thinking about why do this? Does this make sense or any of this stuff? And I think it does. And it's because if it's the poor people who need help, if it's the poor people who want all these programs, then they're the ones who need to be taxed for it. So with our welfare system, we have a system of enabling where we just give money to people who don't work. This is the opposite. This is, oh, you don't want to work very much? Well, you know what? It's not like you get to go through life without any problems. You have health problems, you have relationship problems, financial problems. Your home, it's going to need repairs. Your heater, your air conditioner, you're going to have to get new appliances, new furniture, new electronics, new all this stuff. And so if you want somebody to take care of you, you got another thing coming. you're going to take care of yourselves, whether if you like it or not. And so if you don't want to be taxed 60%, then figure it out so that you're not getting that. Now, I would say the exception to this would be people who are incapable of doing this for themselves. So people who are incapable of making decisions. And like I said, there's a few groups that fall under this. These children, people who are mentally disabled, and senior citizens in cognitive decline. So not all senior citizens. And then people who have just fried their brain from doing some kind of substance abuse and they're no longer incapable of being functioning members of society. And they should all be put in different institutions to be able to take care of these people. And that could be something that everybody goes ahead and helps fund with something like that, because you know what, it's not the fault of children. You know, they're just young. It's not the fault of people who are mentally incompetent. It's not the fault of senior citizens who are in cognitive decline. These are things that are out of our control. And so one of the things that they have is that if their economy is good, then their pensions go up. But if the economy does bad, then the pensions go down. Their retirement pensions. And it's like, well, yeah, that makes sense. Instead of just handing it off to the next generation as a bunch of debt that they then have to burden. It's like, you don't want that. You want them to be able to be creative and innovating as possible so that they can make more money. You want to give them as much freedom as possible to do whatever it takes so that they can be successful and productive instead of hindering them. This is one of the problems that we have with college, is that if you go to college and you rack up all of this debt, you can't even file for bankruptcy, and so students are left with all this financial burden left on their backs whenever they shouldn't be having any of this, because you want them to go out and start new businesses, generating more money, being more productive. It's counterintuitive. It's all backwards. And part of the reason why they did this was because they were tired of this. In the 70s and 80s, it was like, if we don't make a change, the pension system's going to collapse. And so they privatized this. And so they don't have any more of these empty politician promises for higher pensions. And he specifically says it in the video. It's like, that's great. So I want to show a clip here of the video about their Social Security.
Sweden's version of Social Security was going broke. So Sweden privatized that too. Privatized the pension system. That terrifies people.
And obviously that scares people. But when they realized that the alternative was that the whole pension system would collapse, they thought that this is much better than nothing.
And they made it work? That's the real kick to the nuts right there, is that they made it work. And it's working. Well, why is this an argument? Why are we debating about this stuff? I don't understand this. The evidence is in. It's been in for decades. Sorry for yelling, but this is why I'm doing this. So they did several things. So they did tax cuts. They privatized retirement, their school system, which is also now done with vouchers, which, I can do a whole video on school systems and the vouchers. I have an answer, a great answer for how the school system needs to be updated. I'm going to do an updated series. I've done one video on it already. I forgot what the topic was, but it's like I could do one every month. I'm actually going to hold off on it because why do it if there's aren't any viewers yet? I mean, there's some, but it's just a handful. They had healthcare waiting lines. Those are gone. They cut public spending. It's like, yeah. You know what? I don't need any more fancy stuff. There was this one where I saw where it was in New York. Go figure. And they spent $2 million on one restroom facility. It's really nice, modern. It was real pretty. But $2 million? What? You know how nice of a house you could live in for $2 million? I mean, it was just a bathroom. It was just a bathroom. It was enough for maybe for a dozen people, half a dozen men, half a dozen women. It wasn't that big, but it's like you could live in a great house for $2 million, be completely paid. What? And all they could fork out was one stupid bathroom? Anyways, they privatized the National Rail Network. So just like with New York that we were talking about, where they had the ATF, they had their subway system where it's all being run and maintained by the government. They did the opposite. And now it's all cleaned up and it's doing great. There it is right there. Everything's clean. There's no graffiti. It's safe. Everything's lit up. Everything is wonderful. Why is this an issue? Why are we talking about this? They also sold state-owned businesses. One of them was Absolute Vodka. I don't know if you're a drinker. I don't drink myself. I drink very little. But I've seen Absolute Vodka. I've seen those bottles because I do a hair. And I've seen those. And I've got friends who drink that crap. And it's like, yes, I've seen it. I didn't know it was from Sweden. But now it's supposedly booming. And so instead of the state running it and keeping it, which it was going downhill, now it's doing well. And they get to tax it. Oh. So it's clown world. It's all backwards. Oh, and then also Tim Pool was talking about how tax hikes with trickle-down economics don't work. And it's like, yes, he's figured out something that Milton Freidman was talking about during his lifetime. And it's like, why is this getting pushed around? So there's, there I go saying so. I say that too much. There is Angie's List, and Angie's List has gone down in the tube, and it's because another company bought them out, Home Advisor. And they have two different ways of operating. Home Advisor, they get all this information and they sell it to contractors. And contractors, they all bid like mad on it, and so it really generates a lot of money. Angie's List kind of almost did it the opposite way, where they said contractors and businesses do have to pay, but they're going to get rated by the customers. And so it was really great because I tell you what, if you went on to Angie's List, you were going to get really good service. But on Home Advisor, there was no proof. And so they could have been any kind of criminal, and there's plenty of criminals that go into the trades. Not all of them, not by any stretch of the imagination, but you do. If you're doing a big company, you have to be careful that their low-level employees may not be the shiniest gems on the block right there. So just be careful with it. Still, it's usually not too big of a problem, but whenever it's a little mom and pop place, it's like, no, because they're working next to these people and they don't want anything like that. So, I mean, they know them up close and personal, but whenever it's a big company, you know, the higher-ups are up there, and what do they care? And so, this horrible company, Home Advisor, just because they had a market that was based off of money and profits instead of competence, they had more money, and so they were able to buy them out. And I think that's one of the things that goes on with kind of with politics. It's more about money instead of competence. And I have an answer for all this. I tell you what, I'm going to get to all this. So this wraps it all up for this episode. I need you to hit the thumbs up, to like, and subscribe, because the algorithm needs to know. If you've understood this, hit the thumbs up and then use this information and go let everyone know. It's like, no, I'm not swallowing your lies anymore. Go tell that to another sucker. So thanks a lot for watching. Hope you enjoyed. We'll see you later. Bye.